We want best case scenario. This is what happens. We often live in an entire different reality of what we see. So what happens is you and I, we live in this constant struggle. We live in this tension between what's real versus what's ideal. What's real and what's ideal. And if you think about it, you and I, or maybe it's just me, but we hate to struggle. Am I the only one in this place that hates to struggle? But we hate struggle. But one thing that we need to realize is that struggle is not bad. Struggle is not bad if it's channeled properly. If it's channeled properly. Because this is what it does. Struggle causes people to push. Somebody say push. It makes you work harder towards ideal. Example, reality says that you don't make enough money. I think that's everybody's reality. Come on now. But the ends aren't coming together. And ideally, you need to make more money, right? So what does this cause us to do? It causes us to push. It causes us to hustle towards an ideal. And it's like that in every facet of your life and my life. It's like that, including our relationships. It's just not with our job. It has to do with yours and mine's relationships. So the struggle to move from what's real to what is ideal is not a bad thing if we allow the tension to motivate us, to work in our homes, to work in our relationships, to work on our family and the ideal future for God that God has for you and me. So the tension pushes us to move forward. And so I don't know if you've noticed this, but we're going to preach the ideal around here. We're going to push forward for the ideal. But the problem is, church, is that we live in a world, we live in a culture that wants to remove all tension. Have you noticed that? Like, we just live in a world that wants to remove all tension. They want it to be all roses and butterflies. We live in a world surrounded by a culture that wants to get rid of all struggle, regardless of how dysfunctional your family is. Regardless of how crazy that your marriage is, regardless of how non-existent your relationship is with your kids. This is what culture wants to tell you. It wants to tell you that it's okay. It's okay that your family is dysfunctional. It's okay that your family's crazy. You have a crazy marriage. That regardless of the non-existence of your relationship with your kids, is that it's okay. Just relax. It's perfectly normal to feel that way. It's perfectly normal. That's just the new norm. In fact, we live in a culture that wants to normalize everything so that you and I don't feel bad about anything. Have you guys noticed that? That's the type of culture that we live in, that they want to normalize everything so that you and I don't feel bad about anything. It's just normal. Don't worry about it. Everybody has issues. It's okay. And that bothers me. You want to know why? You can tell me not to worry about my dysfunctions, and you can tell me that everybody has troubles, and you can tell me that even divorce is okay, and you can tell me that that's just the way that it is. But when it comes to thinking about my kids, when it comes to me thinking about my children, I want my kids and I want my family and I want my relationships to move towards ideal. I want best case scenario for them. I want ideal. How many of you guys want ideal for your family in this place? Where men and women, listen, stay in love for a lifetime. I look at my mother and my father-in-law. They've been together since they were teenagers. And they have a great relationship. And that's a marriage that's been modeled for me and my wife amongst other marriages. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see where a man and a woman love each other for a lifetime. Where kids actually want to come home. Even though sometimes, hey, let me tell you, let me be real with you. Can we get real? Like, sometimes we can have attitudes. Sometimes I can have an attitude. Like, confession, like the last few days, like I just had an attitude. It's like I don't know what it is. Like, I couldn't get rid of it. And I'm like, God, where's this coming from? What's going on? Why do I all of a sudden have this attitude? And I find myself apologizing to my wife and my kids. And even before we came here, we huddle up and we pray. And I was like, God, forgive me. It was just these attitudes, because we have those attitudes. But I want to get rid of the attitude, because I want a home where my kids want to come home. Amen? Like, I want a home where my kids want to come back home to mom and dad's house, where we have this family that pulls together, where we have a family that actually works together. We say together. But here's the thing. to have all those things, to have that type of family, it takes hard work. Would you guys agree? Like, it's not easy to have a good family. Like, I think I'm older. I think I'll Leave It to Beaver. Like, when you watch those old movies, like, you see those families, and it's just like, man, that's just a good old American family. Come on, somebody. But here's the thing. It takes hard work to have that type of family. But what's true in our Christian lives is also true in our family life. What's true in our Christian life is also true in our family life. This is what I want you to think about. Jesus, he comes along, and this is what he does. He makes it painfully clear the reality of mine and your sin. Like, he made it painfully clear the reality of our sin. Like, we live sinful lives. And he shows us our depravity. And he shows us our moral corruption. He shows you and I our wickedness. And this is what he does. He makes it painfully obvious of my shortcomings. You notice how I said my shortcomings? And I'm going to say your shortcomings. Like, he made it obvious of our shortcomings. But this is what he does. Jesus just doesn't cast us off and say, you're not worthy. This is what he does. He lives out best case scenario. Why? Because he offers his life for your life. He offers his life for my life. And what does he do? He sets this new standard. A life that you and I on our best day could never come close to duplicating. Like, on my best day, I can never duplicate the life that Jesus lived. Why? Because it was so holy, and Jesus is so perfect, right? Because me, on my best day, I fell short miserably. Miserably. But this is what he did. He raised the standard so high. Jesus raised it so high that it's impossible for anybody to measure up to. But this is what he did. In our weaknesses, in my weakness, in your weakness, this is what he does. He provides grace. Somebody say grace in this place. Grace. Jesus provides grace. Why? Because we all fall short. Somebody say we all fall short. But this is what Jesus does. He makes sure not to attach condemnation because we fall short. He makes sure not to attach condemnation. And while Jesus pointed to the ideal, he refused to condemn those who fall short. Isn't that a blessing? And my point is this, is that Jesus left us to live in struggle. You might be like, what? What do you mean? You mean when I give myself to Jesus, like everything's not a bowl of cherries? Like I'm not going to be a millionaire? No, look, God left us to live with struggle. Struggle is fine with God. It's okay. It's okay that your family will never be ideal. It's okay that your kids are never going to be perfect. Like it's okay. That's one of the best things best advice that my pastor gave me. Is, Bernard, take it easy on your kids. You're putting expectations on them that nobody else has. Because when I got ordained, I was like, you guys need to do this. I'm a pastor. And he's like, have grace on them. And that really helped me, even though I could be rough at times. But that's what it is, right? It's okay that our kids will never be perfect. It's okay that, listen, that your marriage will continue to have ups and downs. It's okay that your relationships have up and downs. That's just the way it is. Our relationships are never going to be perfect. We're always going to have ups and downs. There's always going to be rocky times. That's this struggle and this tension between real and ideal. That's the struggle between real and ideal. And it's what pushes us to do the work. And so I'm going to tell you this morning that preaching on family it's not an easy thing to do. And it's not something that's easy to do. Because there's no real good examples of family in the Old Testament. Did you know that? There's just thousands of pages of messed up families. That's all there is in the Old Testament. And then you get to the New Testament, and there's no really good examples there either. It's just a bunch of messed up people, messed up families. All we have in the New Testament about the family is what the family is supposed to do. That's all we have. And I'll summarize the New Testament teaching on family on this list. Are you ready? Husbands, love your wives. You ready for number 2? Wives, submit to your husbands. Children, are you ready? Obey your parents. Fathers, ready? Don't provoke your kids. That's pretty much the whole thing. That sums it all up. That's the summarization of the New Testament. That is the ideal for the family. Love your wife. Bro, have you met my wife? She's a royal pain. Submit to your husbands. Do you know who he is? Obey your parents. Bruh, my parents are stupid. Hey, isn't that the way the kids talk these days? Bruh. Don't provoke your kids. What do you mean my kids don't listen to me? How are you going to tell me not to provoke my kids when they don't listen? It's like I got to get my mom's old wooden sandal and give them a state. Do you guys say that out here? Give them a spanking. That was New Mexico slang. Come on, somebody. But that's the ideal. But this is what this is what we all shoot for in our family. This is the list that we all fall short on, though. Would you guys agree? Like, we all fall short in that